Let's begin the process of discovering the poses for our keyframes for the arm swing. We want to use the keyframe structure that we established for the legs. It keeps us organized, it keeps us on track. It makes it really easy to manage. And then we'll time them just a little bit differently after we've gone in and initially created all the keyframes. It's one of the reasons I love working in Blender so much and doing all these animations, is that we can establish all the locations of our keyframes and then shift them by one frame or two to get a slightly different result or more creative outcome. Let's go ahead and start that process of figuring out the key poses for our arms on all of these keyframes. And I'm going to start with the contact pose, and this is a good place to begin. I've already created the contact pose here on frame 1, and there's a couple ideas that we want to look at. Specifically, we want to look at how the movement of our arm is broken into the animation itself, because how our character walks and swings its arm is different depending on the direction the arm is swinging. When the arm is swinging forward, we're going to have a much different look than it is swinging backwards. It's not carbon copy clones of each other. They're actually two different moments, if you will. So let's figure out how we're going to pose our character as the arm swings forward to frame 13, and then how it swings backwards to frame 25. So the totality of this foreground arm, it's going to swing forward to frame 13, and then it's got to return to this pose here on frame 25. So with that said, let's do the easy lifting first. We already know what the animation frame is going to need to look like on frame 25. Let's get that done pretty easy. We can just take this keyframe, Shift D to duplicate it, and take it over here to frame 25, and now we have a pretty good starting point. We could do the exact same thing here on frame 13, but I think probably the easiest way to do this is to start customizing these drawings pretty early on. To make it a little bit easier in my brain, I'm going to deactivate the visibility of that background arm. That way I can really understand how this character is going to move. And I can already see an idea in my mind. Now, a couple big picture ideas here when it comes to working with arm swings is we want to make sure that we are swinging in the right direction at the right time of the step. If you look carefully down the foreground leg, this leg is forward, so its corresponding arm needs to be backwards, right? This is how humans walk. If our left leg is forward, our left arm is backwards, okay? So this is a good place to begin. As we go here to frame 13, you can see that it's off. This looks unnatural, so we can already see on the middle contact pose is that we need to figure out what the pose is going to be on this area. So let's go ahead and do that real fast. Let's start defining what that's going to look like. And I'm going to use the location of my 3D cursor to just really help me out here, because I can do this real fast with the rotation tool, because we're just going to be rotating these joints. I'm going to be looking at the total extents first. How far do I want my arm to be going forward? The distance the arm swings often determines the energy that we're projecting in the animation itself. If it's a real shallow swing like this, maybe our character is slowly, casually walking across the scene. If it's really big out there like that, perhaps our character is doing like a speed walk and it's really a high energy movement. The arm swings give us this wonderful sense of kinetic forward movement. And so that's something to explore in your animation. How far backwards and how far forwards do you want your arms to be swinging? If they're just swinging here at the side, it's almost as if our character is not even really thinking about the walk. He's internalizing his movements, and he's thinking about something other than the locomotion and the movement that he's created inside the scene. So for mine, I think I'm going to have it kind of out here like this. This isn't necessarily the pose that I'm looking to create, but this is a good general distance. Let's test it real fast. Yeah. I like that. I'm just flipping through the frames by dragging on my playhead, and generally speaking, I think that's a good place to begin. Okay, now let's look at how the pose for the rest of this is going to look, because I want to start creating a small little bend here. Our arm just doesn't statically rotate from the shoulder. All three of these joints are in play, and we need to make sure that we're representing those movements as clearly as we can. Let's grab a 3D cursor, and I'm going to go back and just make a small adjustment real fast. I'm looking at the upper arm now, not looking so much at the at the forearm. That's going to come next. I'm looking at this angle in here. Let's go back to the other one. Now, I'm not trying to make it an opposite. I'm trying to explore how I can rotate some of these pieces. Oops. Let me put that back there. Grab the W key is the keyboard shortcut for the selection tool. And I want to select just these parts and then the elbow. And now let's rotate it. Yeah, is that gonna get me what I'm after? I think maybe I want to have it go the opposite direction. This looks like we've broken the elbow. So we can't forget about that elbow, right? Snap, ouch, that's not what we want. Now, initially I was like, maybe we'll have it go down a little bit. But I think what I'm looking for is maybe something right in there. Not a perfectly straight arm. There's a small little bend. Whenever we're designing our keyframes, I try to stay away as best I can from perfectly straight planks. So something like this that flattens the animation pretty quickly. A small little angle in there is going to break up the planes of the animation and create a more dynamic movement. All right, I'm pretty happy with this. Let's continue rotating our wrist. I'm going to grab just that point down there. And where's the hand going to be? Yeah, maybe something like that. That could be kind of cool. I may have gone a little too far. Let's try it like this. And I'm actually going to grab just that one and bring it down a little bit. Something like that. All right, let's see what we got. Take a step back. Yeah, I'm happy with that. That's a good place to go. As I flip back and forth between these frames, I can see that I want to have a little bit more or a little bit less rotation on the hand. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Now, the less rotation on the hand here is going to give me a great opportunity to produce some overlapping action in the animation. As the arm swings backwards on these next series of keyframes, the wrist is going to rotate up. It's going to pop up. It's going to look really cool. We're going to apply that wave principle that we've looked at before inside of the second part of our animation. Remember, the first part of your arm swing is going to look different than the second part of your arm swing. All right, so with these two contact poses established, let's go in and start exploring this passing pose. This passing pose is really important for us to nail because this is where the flexibility of our arm swing really starts to show up. Let's start looking at some of these ideas. And one of the things that we can do here, and let's turn on our onion skinning. There we go. Because I want to make sure I'm seeing how far this is going to go on the passing, and I think I went a little too far. We don't want it to be right here in the center. We want to try to find a passing position. Yeah, because the arm is going to start to slow down as it gets to the peak. It's going to be really fast here in the back as the arm rapidly swings forward to propel our walk forward. A lot of the forward momentum comes from this very quick movement of our arms. If you've ever tried to run without swinging your arms, you know it's very difficult. Same thing when we're walking. We have a lot of quick movement, and then it slows once we get to the peak. So this passing pose resists the idea to have it be boof, dead center. Have it be a little bit forward. Yeah, I like that. Somewhere right around in there. And we're also going to experiment. With... Oops, excuse me. I did not hit the W key enough. There we go, W key to go back into the selection tool. And now let's see what happens when we start playing around with his elbow here. We don't want it to be a plank, but what would happen if it trailed like this? We're going to break the bone here. And we're allowed to do this in the art of animation. By breaking the bone right here in the middle, and I may have done it a little too extreme, by breaking the bone right here in the middle of the animation, we give it a little bit more flexibility because now the rotation here is going to be really quick upward on the forearm, and it may give us a really fun result. I may have gone a little too extreme. I'm going to grab these other parts and pieces in here as well on this animation layer and put my 3D cursor back here at the center and rotate it forward. I think I lost some movement. It's looking a little odd at the moment because it goes here, and then we haven't animated it up and down yet. That's going to come here in a second. So it's still a little funny because our body is moving quite rapidly behind it, but I'm looking at just the arm. If it's helpful for you, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to turn off my body layer. Yeah, because now we can play it kind of in an isolated form and get a much stronger understanding of how these poses are working. Now, I like the posing of the upper arm and lower arm. Let's pose the wrist a little bit. It's the one part that didn't get some action here. And if you look at the way the animation is going, the wrist and the hand really aren't moving at all between the passing and the contact. It looks a little flat and lifeless. So let's give it its own kind of unique moment. Maybe in here, it rotates forward. Nah, I don't like that. I don't like that. Let's push it back a little bit more, which is going to create a trailing effect. Yes. Oh, I like that a little bit more. I've gone a little too extreme on that one pose, so let's rotate it backwards. Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there. I'm starting to dig it. I'm starting to dig it. Now, the cool thing about working with all these tools inside of Blender is they give us a great opportunity for us to experiment and to explore. Sometimes we don't necessarily have the answers that we're looking for, and that's okay. That's part of the animation process. It really is. We're inventing something new that no one's ever seen before. And through that process of invention, we're going to make mistakes. Actually, I wouldn't even call them mistakes. It's just we're iterating on the actual design itself. Let's go into object mode. Sometimes when you're in edit mode, these selected wireframes really kind of get in the way of you understanding how this is working. Yeah, as a structure, I think this is working out great. Let's continue the animation here, and then we'll go back in and tweak these movements to get a much finer result. All right, so let's go to the passing pose on the back side of the swing, because we've already established the contact pose here, and we at the front part of the swing, and then it's going to swing backwards. So let's figure out the passing pose in here, and start to experiment and explore how this is all going to work. Let's go back into edit mode real fast and start selecting our keyframes. Or not a keyframes, excuse me, our drawings. All right, so this swing backwards is not as extreme. The arm is generally going to keep its shape. I'm going to turn my body back on so I have a good, oops, that's back arm, excuse me. There we go. So I have a good kind of idea as to where this passing position resides in relationship to the body. Now the backward swing is going to be pretty slow. It's only fast up and then it's slow back. So I think I'm going to aim for maybe kind of right around in here. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to bring the elbow forward a little bit to create a nice smooth little bend. Let's do that real fast. To bring the elbow forward, actually, before I go any further, I'm going to rotate just a little bit this way. Let's turn the body layer off so I can see what I'm doing. Put my 3D cursor right there at the elbow. That way, I can rotate with some accuracy. Yeah, there we go. I'm liking that. That's a good pose for that back. Let's take the wrist and rotate it back as well, just a little bit, somewhere right around, maybe in there. Yeah, let's try that out. Let's play the animation. Now, I'm not looking so much at the wrist. The wrist is something that we're going to have to continue to refine. Yeah, I'm liking what we have so far. I think I need to continue to refine this pose in here a little bit to get a real good solid sense of the movement. And once we have those other keyframes in there, it's going to start to work a little bit more cleanly as well. Okay, let's keep going here because we've focused on the contact frames. Those are working good. We also have the passing poses. Let's get those down poses kind of nailed. And we'll go from there. Okay. So here on the down pose, we need to make some small adjustments. In addition to the shoulder, let's figure out where we want our object to rotate around. As I mentioned before, it's a real fast movement going forward. So I'm going to have the spacing be a little extreme. I'm going to deselect that top part of my arm and move my 3D cursor down to my elbow so I can rotate it right around in there. Yeah, it's already starting to look much better because then it can go forward and then pop in the front. Let's get that peak pose in here. Same idea. Let's put the cursor back up here at the shoulder. We're going to have to fix the location of rotation, or the location of the arm, here in a minute. I'm just getting the poses kind of done first, and then we can figure out these small details a little bit later. I find it really helpful to organize my brain a little bit as I go through this process. If we do it in passes, it's not as complex. And animation is an art form of passes. We're not trying to do it all in one moment. There we go. Yeah, let's play it now. It does require a certain degree of pretending, if you will. Yeah, I'm digging that. That's cool. There's a little bit of a pause there at the end, which I like. At the end of the forward swing, it hovers just for one small second, and it gives me a great indication that things are working, that it's slowing down as it reaches the conclusion of its movement arc. Yeah, I'm liking that. Now, the cool thing about the backwards arm swing here, especially when it comes this down, is that we can start having some big-time fun with the wrist itself. And let's get the arm kind of dialed first. I'm going to rotate it just a little bit back, somewhere right around in here, because we want to slowly end its movement and then slowly begin its movement. So the distance that this is going to travel in between the contact and the down is going to be very little. So let's figure out the wrist, because if the wrist is going to be a big player in this, I'm going to deselect all of that, change my 3D cursor to my elbow. I'm going to rotate it just a little bit more so the wrist is generally in the same position. And this is where it gets fun too, because then I can put my 3D cursor down there, and I'm going to select just my hand now and rotate this up. So look like it flips up for a couple. Yeah, the little flip up does a great job. You can actually kind of see it here. It makes it feel like all these joints are interconnected. We get some good overlapping action in there. That's really kind of fun. All right, so this is looking good. Now we need one more pose over here for the back of our arm swing. And let's look at the peak pose, as they say, for the back side of the arm. The onion skinning has given us a really good illustration of where we want that target to be. Let's start rotating it a little bit. And I want it to slowly end its movement. I don't want it to move too much. Remember, we gotta consider the easing of our animation in here. We slowly end its movement arcs, and we slowly begin it. Now, we're not trying to match the pose precisely. Remember, we don't want a plank. We don't want the pose to be identical, because then it's going to look like a stutter. We want to give it its own movement. So maybe in here, the wrist is going to rotate slightly faster, but the elbow is going to start to slow. It's going to give us a nice smooth transition at the wrist and a nice slowing here at the elbow. And of course, we can't forget the wrist and the hand. Let's give it a unique pose down here as well. Can't forget the last little bit here. Yeah, let's try that. Let's go into object mode, test our animation, and see what we got. And we have to continue to explore the up and down movement. But yeah, as an idea, there's a bobble in there that I think is really being generated. Yeah, it's being generated from that peak pose. So here's the passing pose and then the peak. Yeah, the passing pose and the peak is too extreme on the wrist. So we're getting this really uncomfortable bobble. Boop, 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 boop. So let's adjust that last pose. And this is part of the animation process. Sometimes you have an idea, and you're like, you try something, and then you find out, you know what, it's just not working. It's just not working. It's just not working. I've broken the bones again a little too much. So let's fix it real fast. Let's change. And I think the solution is going to come from the wrist. Let's just make one small change. Yeah, I'm liking that. That's pretty cool. We may even want to let's experiment for a second. Let's really rotate it backwards. and see what that looks like. Yeah, it's going to pop back the other way as it gets to this other keyframe. So that was that idea isn't going to give me the result I'm after. Yeah, I think that's going to work. In addition, I'm also going to focus my attention on the wrist. I think if we were to really adjust the wrist a little bit more. Let's play it now. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to do some additional overlapping action on the back of my animation here. This passing pose on the back. What if we were to go in and rotate it a little more extreme like that? Sometimes you just got to try it before you really understand how it's all going to work out. I don't think that's going to work out yet. It looks like it's rotating the wrong way, so I'm going to hit the undo key, put it back a little bit. Yeah, that's a little bit better. I think I'm going to make one final adjustment to the passing pose, and specifically the wrist. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Let's play it now. Yeah, that's better. That's better. I like it. And with the in-betweens, it's definitely going to start to smooth out a little bit and look a little bit more natural. So this is the process that we're going to go through when designing our keyframes for our animation of the arm swing itself. We want to use the structure of the underlying animation of the body and the legs to serve as our guide, but then look at what we're doing and how it's creating this sense of life. Right now, with the arm not going and not moving with the shoulder, it looks a little silly, and we'll continue to correct that in the next pass. But this is the process that we go through. One keyframe at a time, one pose at a time, and then we test it, we experiment, and see if these edits are really working out the way we hope them to be.